Hey everybody, welcome back to Cup of Jen. I am your host, Janessa Galbraith. I wanted to say hello, welcome you to this episode. We get to do part 2 today of Conversations with Karen, which feature Karen Elgersma, who was a Shaw television host and storyteller, and now owns her own business, Karen Elgersma Media, otherwise known as KEM. So it's a really awesome conversation that we got to have, over the past 2 weeks. And it was really amazing to get to hear just her transition from the television world into kind of media marketing and storytelling at a local level. So, really exciting stuff. And I know that a lot of you tuned in last week. And if you hadn't done that yet, I would highly encourage you to listen to the first half. And now today we have the second half, which is really exciting. So, there's a lot more detail there and just stories of things that have built Karen's career, which I think is amazing for all of us to hear. I did want to briefly speak on something I spoke about last episode, which is just my dad and his health. I like to kind of update you guys with things and how they're going in my life. And so something that recently came up is that my dad a few months ago got some tests done, just wasn't feeling 100%. And we actually were told that there was a chance that he could have prostate cancer. And so he did a biopsy a number of weeks ago, and we found out not 2 days ago, 3 days ago, but the Monday before, we found out that he actually is confirmed to have prostate cancer. So obviously that was not the diagnosis we had hoped for. However, it was really great to just finally understand what's been going on in my dad's body. And so I wanted to let you guys know that I could use a lot more prayer and that my dad could use prayer. And I know that a lot of people who listen would love to pray and send great vibes our way. And so I just wanted to update you on that. If there's anything further, I will definitely let you know. But at the moment, I think we're still kind of in shock and trying to figure out the best course of treatment. There are options. I will tell you that of his prostate, there was only 10% that was cancerous. So still not great, but obviously better than if we were to hear like 80% or that the cancer had spread or anything like that. So we're just trying to be grateful and thankful with the small steps. And it is something that can be dealt with. And we have a lot of faith that we will do just that. So could use your prayers. And I love to let you guys know what's going on in my life, because obviously I had hoped to have both last episode and this episode with Karen out a lot sooner, but things have really kind of derailed over the past month because of my dad's health. So just wanted to keep you posted on that. But I do want to get to the rest of the conversation with Karen. And so I hope that wherever you guys are at, that you're having a really great week in July, in the summer now. I know things have still been intense. I'm just hoping that you're finding peace during this time. And I do hope that you can stay focused on what you love, which is to be an artist and to be creative and to feel inspired, and hopefully you gain something from this episode. So without further ado, we have Karen Elgersma.
I was much more comfortable in telling people stories than I was being an actor telling it. I mean, it was kind of like a second level. Telling people stories here, being an actor and telling it here. So I still loved it, and I'm really glad I did, and I feel really lucky that I got to be on stage, because everybody should be in a play once in their life, honestly, even if you're a very minor role. There's something about being in a play that's just magical and being part of community. But which is why I love high school theater. But I think that it's not what I was put on this planet to do. But because I had the gift of being on stage, I was on the board of Pacific Theater. We raised money for it when they built the theater that's downtown right now. I was on the board of the Canadian College of Performing Arts. I was on the board, both my husband and I were on the board of Shemanis Theater. We have donated money and time and marketing resources to promote live theater I was on the board of SAMC at Trinity Western University. So this is so near and dear to my heart, and it wouldn't be had I not had that chance to play on stage.
Yeah.
So I always say to artists, try everything, because it gives you empathy and understanding, and it will make you a lifelong patron of the arts because you get it. You've tried it, you've tested it, you've got a taste of it, and it makes you a more well-rounded, empathetic artist for sure.
Empathy and particularly the way that you've kind of described almost curating and bringing things out of people in their story that can be used to help others and to inspire and to have this shared common experience of being kind of a human. And I think that's what theater does really well. And that's why there's something irreplaceable about really practically being in the building with somebody else and actually having that magical experience where you forgot that you're actually sitting in theater seats, that you thought you were inside the story or whatever it might be.
Oh yeah.
But words like gift and purpose, and it really resonates with me, obviously because of our faith. And I was just wondering, how has that, if at all, impacted your journey with storytelling and your falling in love with story?
Well, I think that when you have a spiritual belief, that that this is not a luck that you just came onto this earth and you're just here to exist and you're gone. And I think it drives your it drives you to figure out discover what your purpose is, and then to do all you can to use your gifts to make a difference in the world and impact people. And I think that the values that you learn and through your faith, and the really the discipline of having a faith, even prayer, journaling,
Sure. Yeah.
reading.
Keeping up with a real relationship with God is different than just, okay, I'm going to obey the rules, but having an actual interaction. Yeah. You're going to need some discipline, I think, just like any relationship.
And I think what happens is that the relationship you have with God ends up really being your moral compass. And so when you go to make decisions, I mean, like one decision that is always easy for me to make, even though it's crazy, is that I, no matter what, do the absolute best product for my client. So if my client doesn't pay me, if they're frustrating to work with, I'm like, no, because when I show up to do my very best, no matter what, because that is who I am in the kingdom. And so I think that really drives me. And
you're working for Christ. You're working for them, but it's like as if you're working for Christ. And
never get caught up. If someone's not paying you what you're worth and you committed to doing something, give it your all, because the only person you really have, the only employer you really have is, but it will come back too. I mean, there's a karma to it, that when
you reap what you sow when you do these works.
You do. But I do think it drives you differently. I've been a boss almost half my career, as well as creative.
You have been a boss.
I know. I'm a boss
in both ways. Yes. But an actual manager. Yes.
And so I always used to drive me crazy. I always would have to, my team was, when I'd have employees that were always like, well, I'm not getting paid for that. And money and how they were treated, and not to say that's not important, because it is. That's part of what you negotiate when you get a contract. And they should be treated well, but it really interfered with their ability to do excellent work. And you could see it, like it showed up, like they were unenthusiastic, and they didn't put their all into it, and their product wasn't very good. It was like ho-hum. So I think that when you're in relationship with God, that you really you have a responsibility to be amazing. Because you've been given this gift, right? So and I also think it's humbling. I was out on a shoot the other day with a videographer, and he's 22 and I'm not. So he was talking about how he would rather work with somebody who's not very talented, but is really nice. Because he said, I just can't work with people with ego anymore. And I said, you are so lucky that at 22 you figured this out, because in our industry, Janessa, and all your listeners can attest to, there's a lot of people with big egos. I'm not saying that being a Christian means you don't have big ego, but it's a lot harder to have a big ego.
You're
Yeah.
definitely, I think, challenged scripturally
Yeah.
to analyze if you have a big ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Exactly.
too small of an ego too. Like if you don't believe in yourself or if you believe that you are everything,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah. Yeah.
a discrepancy there
Yeah,
for
I agree.
sure.
I think that when you are in a healthy relationship, you recognize that we're all the same. We're all human. We're all
Equal.
equal, and nobody's being famous or rich or successful or
Yeah.
doesn't make you more important. And so I've interviewed a ton of very rich, successful, famous celebrities over the years,
Hmm.
and I always had to kind of like I'd be nervous and whatever, and I'd always kind of come back to that thing. It's like we're all equal. So it's not even fair to the people I'm interviewing to put them on a pedestal. It's not cool. They
Right.
want to be treated just like, and they should want to be treated that way. Not all of them do get want some want to have special treatment, but although I have to preface that with, I do think if somebody has earned their stripes, they should get respect. I do.
Of
I
course.
like if Meryl Streep
Yes.
was coming on your podcast,
Yeah.
you'd
Yeah.
make sure you had her name spelt right. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
But
I
Meryl is still one of the most, I feel like, humble people out there when she
absolutely,
talks about her career. And it's
yeah,
very interesting that the winners who really, I think, really win, like you can sense that
oh,
they're humble with their pursuit of the actual art.
yeah. So yeah, those that's the gift, I think, is you show up whole and present and if here to do service. It's a service. We're here to serve, right? So
Yeah.
if somebody's grumpy about paying me, which doesn't happen very often to be honest, but I'm just saying I'm still going to do an
Yeah.
amazing job for that person.
Since we're talking about it, I just love the idea of you getting to name drop a little bit. Is there a celebrity that you interviewed that you were surprised by their humility in that way, or just something about them that they shared with you? Were you surprised about that human connection you were able to get with them maybe?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of myths about celebrities about how they have, servants and everyone. And
Yes.
there's a lot of
Sure.
like, well, if I had money, then I'd be thin too, or
Yeah.
whatever it is that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah.
But at the most
Right.
profound moment I remember where this became very real to me was Nelly Furtado.
Yeah.
Her record had gone platinum and she was a big deal. She had come out to Victoria. She grew up in Victoria and she'd come out to help with David Suzuki and the Land Conservancy to save Souk Potholes, this beautiful piece of land on Vancouver Island. And she and I spent the whole day together at Souk Potholes to film this video that was helping to raise money to save this area. And
Wow.
she had a 2-year-old daughter, and Oliver was 2 at the time. And we'd spend half our time. She's looking at me, she goes, "So, how do you deal with the guilt? When I always hate leaving her at home." Like she was asking me the same questions that any other mama who had a
Mhm.
2-year-old who had to work was asking. But she also was asking super interesting questions, like, "So, you know, um, tell me more about your son and
Right.
do you ever I love bringing my daughter to work with me even though she's young because I want to expose her to everything. I'm trying to teach her how to speak 3 languages now." And we had this beautiful interaction, and I forgot I was talking to Nelly Furtado because I was a bit in awe of her
Of
at the time.
course.
And I remember thinking, as a mom, thinking, because I think I had that little fantasy, like, well, if I was famous and rich, I'd have a nanny and everything would be easy. It would not be easy. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it is a little bit easier when you don't have financial means to hire or support your childcare. It's hard, so I don't want to assume that. But I just meant what was really hard for Nellie was also really hard. Like there was this universalness in it, and
Absolutely.
it was amazing. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one other story that I'll never forget. I interviewed Jane Seymour, and I don't know if you know Jane Seymour. She's Your older listeners will know her. She's very, very famous. She had a TV show for years called The Medicine Woman. She was on Dancing with the Stars. She's been on
Yeah.
British, but she's won Academy Awards. She's a very big deal. And she came to Victoria because she also had a side career as a visual artist. She painted, and she had a show touring, and the show came to Victoria. And we were all, she had a not press conference, but press came to interview her. And I was like, Jane Seymour, I love her
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
much. And I had there's a movie she's in, years ago that was one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'd watched it, I don't know how many times. And I was just so excited to interview her. And so I do the interview with her. It goes amazingly well. She's beautiful, amazing. But I goosebumped the whole time. I think I might have been a little bit weird. Trying not to be that glommy. Anyway,
Right.
Videographer, 21-year-old videographer walks in and he has no idea who she is. So he goes to interview her, doesn't know who she is. And the reporter that was supposed to go with him, who knew who she was called away to do another story. There was like some bad thing happened in Victoria that day, like a political announcement or something.
Right.
And so this guy comes with his camera and he sticks a mic in Jane Seymour's face. He's like, so tell me about your art. And Jane Seymour gets really nervous and she stops and she stutters. And she says a little bit of what her art is. And then he's like, so tell me about what that painting over there means. And she stops. She goes, you don't know who I am, do you? And he goes, no. And she goes, wait a minute. So she says, I want you to put down your camera. I'm going to be back here in a few minutes. She goes into the broom closet of where the art show was. She changes. I don't know. She had a different outfit in the back. She redoes her makeup. She comes out. She sits down on this stool and she looks at the guy and she says, you are going to press record and you're not going to say a word. And I am going to do this interview and you're going to have great copy. Trust me, go. And the guy was like, okay, he presses record. And she goes, hi, I'm Jane Seymour. And she just does the whole interview. And it was just like, I remember like feeling unworthy at the end of it. I was just like, who are you? But what I loved about that moment is instead of getting angry that this guy didn't know who she was, because she was a big deal. I mean, she still is a big deal.
Yeah.
She just said, he doesn't know who I am. This is going to be a disaster. Because she was getting very nervous. Like she was weird, right? She wasn't delivering her best interview. And she's like, there's no way this guy's going to impact my ability to rock this interview. And she owned it. And
she took control of her narrative.
Exactly. And what I learned from both Nelly Furtado and from Jane Seymour and many of the famous or celebrities I've interviewed over the year is it's not that they have a big ego, although some do, but these ones did not. It's that they're unbelievably confident about who they are and what they're good at. And that confidence is big. Like you can feel it. It's like when you're in the room with them, you can feel it. But that's different than ego. It's very different. But we can all learn from that because we should all feel that way about our greatness. But they just got there faster than us for whatever reason. And so.
I just love that you said that because I think personally, and I like to be as vulnerable as I can be on the show because I think that people need to know that you don't just get to some destiny and just everything was just perfect and flawless the whole way. I think it's messy and it's challenging. Yeah. And for myself, I have grown up, I think, a very confident person. But over the past, say, 1.5 to 2 years, it has really been difficult for me to own that. And it was not something that was simple for me to go, let me control my own narrative. It's something that I feel like I'm just now like living in and excited about. But I think there was a long time where I was just, being a very good like straight A student. Like I was waiting for someone to tell me what to do and like how I could move forward with somebody else's like, this is what you should do. And like, when I went to try to look for agents and agents weren't taking new clients at the time or just weren't interested in what I had to offer, it was really difficult for me because I'm like, I don't have somebody to tell me like what I need to do or where to go and how to pursue these things. And so it felt very like lonely, but it's been strange. And I wonder now what it would be like to submit for new agencies if there was something about my lack of belief in myself and I didn't recognize that that's what it was.
Absolutely.
But my lack of that overwhelming confidence of just being straightforward and assertive without cockiness, but just being able to say like, this is who I am and this is what I can bring to the table. This is what I can offer. If you like it, that's excellent. Let's collaborate. If you don't, that's okay.
Yeah.
Not putting the power in somebody else's hands, but actually, and I just love that as you kind of have described your journey, that's something I feel like you've done and that you're still continuing to do too with Chem, but adapting and just going, I can see a change is going to happen here and I want to be in control of that, of how I'm going to react to that. And I just think that's
Yeah.
really wonderful.
And I think that it's also, you need other artists who you can tell war stories with. So if you do have a
Yeah.
day where you're doing auditions or you're trying to get agents and you've been rejected 15 times, you need those other artists
Yeah.
to talk about your day with, or talk about your, and support each other and give each other ideas. And I think having, whether it's an online community or a group of
Hmm.
people, like, it is so important. And I would even encourage young artists, especially, to have an online community where they are disciplined about meeting. I'm going to say once a week, but maybe it's 3 times a month for 45 minutes, and they really encourage each other, and then they continue to do that throughout the week. I've just put my talent resume together, I've redone it, can you take a look at it, team, or whatever. Because as much as we want to be confident, it is just a very difficult thing to do,
Hmm.
and you need support.
Yeah.
You do, and there's no way around it. And I think that the studies show that when someone says to you, I need your help, can you help me with something, that the person you ask for help with, it activates the serotonin in their brain, so they actually feel this bing of joy, right?
Hmm.
And as a result, they like you more. So when you ask people for help, you actually are going to become their favorite. No, that you'll become, they will
Yeah.
actually, you're actually giving them an opportunity to be joyful, and an opportunity to feel more connected to you. And I think as
Wow.
artists, we have to do that a lot. We have to call people and say, I need your help. And interestingly, a lot of the famous people I've interviewed over the years have called on, not so much me for help, but when like David Foster Foundation does a lot of big events in Victoria, because this is where he's from, and his promo person would call me all the time saying, David Foster's coming to town and we need to do this, that, and the other thing, and can you help us out? So no matter how big you are, famous are, how small and new you are, having that ability to ask for help and get connected with other like-minded artists is really going to help keep that confidence alive.
Hmm.
Because I don't know, if you show me an artist out there that is super super confident and super super successful with none of that, then they're an anomaly. But
Yeah.
I really believe that.
But
Yeah.
it's also like going back to what you were saying earlier about the humility. I think
Yeah.
that to ask somebody for help, for certain kinds of people, myself has been included in that category. I think to ask for help sometimes feels vulnerable because I don't want to put you in a position, and it's a confidence thing again. And I never had thought that confidence was an issue for me. And maybe it was specific to my art making, or maybe it's on my personality in general. I don't know. And I'm digging deep, and God is journeying with me through that, which is amazing because I feel like I am a much more well equipped, strong person for asking for help and for seeking community that can really see my burdens. I think that's part of the ethos of why I wanted to start the podcast, because I wanted people to be like, hi guys, this is not something that just happens, and this is
Mm-hmm.
going to be my journey that hopefully I can share with you what I'm doing wrong. Maybe you won't do the thing, or maybe you'll do it too, and we can connect over it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just comforting to
Yeah.
hear
Yes.
that no matter who you are or where you are in your journey, you have the same insecurities. And in fact, one thing that is interesting about interviewing celebrities or well-known people who are later in their career is how they're like, I still have this feeling that I'll never get called again for a TV show or a movie or whatever it
Yeah.
is they do for a living. That there is a vulnerability that you have when you're an artist, and so the confidence comes from building that muscle every day, and it will
Yeah.
never ever come. I mean, yes, like everything in life, the more you do it, like public speaking, the more you do it,
Sure.
the less scary it is. But when you are out of community and you don't have those people connecting you, or you don't have a podcast you can listen to, then you will find you start to lose that confidence again. And so I think that, yeah, like when you get up in the morning, put podcasts like yours on, and find other like-minded creatives, and go to have coffee with other people,
Hmm.
and create a writing group if that's what you like to do with a group of people, because half of what you're going to get out of that is that understanding that we're all in this together. Because I think sometimes when you're alone, you're like, am I the only one who can't get an agent, or am I the only
Yeah.
one who, no?
Totally.
And then you'll talk to other people like, no, I was talking to my friend, and da da da, and there's this comfort in that. And I think it also, what happens too is then you start supporting each other. So
Yeah.
somebody will come along and say, hey, Janessa, I know you've been really looking for an agent. Well, I just found out that there's this agency that's just opened up recently, and da, 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 da. So
Yeah.
I think that that is one of the ways that confidence stays strong. And it's going to get beaten up now and then. Someone's going to be awful to you. Honestly, it happens. It's sad, but it's true. And sometimes people are going to tell you that you're not good at what you do. In fact, that you will. There's 100% chance that somewhere in your career, someone's going to tell you shouldn't act or whatever it is that you do. Somebody will tell you you stink.
Yeah.
And there might even be, for example, if you're in, like, let's just say you were in a show, you got a lead in a show or just a role in a show, and as a professional show, you got paid for it. And it just was a couple of bad eggs in that show, and they all knew each other and they were kind of cliquey. And they said to you at the end of the show, you're not very good. And you're thinking, well, it wasn't just one person, it was kind of a group. But that is when you really need to go back to those people who really believe in you and know you, because that has happened to every artist I've ever interviewed. It's happened to me. It's happened to everybody I know. I've been doing this my entire career. I've been in the spotlight, for almost 35 years at some form. And there always is somebody out there who will do that. And that is really when you need some love. Because if it's just a jerk off saying it, who cares? But if it's someone you actually respect, go with them, or you did a play with, maybe it's even somebody who says something nasty about your podcast. So just remember that is going to happen. And it doesn't mean it's the truth. It means that, and a lot of people say, well, you got to be able to take feedback, but that's not feedback.
Sure. Yeah. There's definitely a line between constructive criticism of like, hey, have you thought about that, versus just tearing down for the sake of tearing down.
And here's another thing. Any young artist listening, here's how you tell the difference between constructive criticism or feedback and nasty. It's your stomach. If your stomach is knotted and you feel like you're going to throw up as they're telling you why you're not doing a good job, that's not good. That is whatever their intention is, to take you down a notch. If you feel kind of excited about it, like, oh, that's so interesting, I never thought about that. If I just did this on my podcast, then I would, be able to get it to the next level. Then it's positive feedback, right?
Right.
That's the thing. So anytime it hurts, and people will tell you, oh, you just can't take it, you're too sensitive. Just stick out your tongue and say, because no, that is your radar. If it feels yucky, it is yucky. If it feels good, it's good.
It reminds me
of,
I
suppose if you're like redonkulously sensitive person, maybe you have to thicken your skin again. But I don't know, Janessa, I've never met an artist that isn't sensitive.
Sure. Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure
we have to be sensitive too, because our artistry is holding up the mirror up to nature, right? Like that's the whole Hamlet thing, where you're constantly trying to connect with other people. If you're not sensitive, you are not able to do that. That empathy. I don't think.
So somebody says, oh, you got to thicken your skin. And that's the other thing. If somebody says to you, oh, you got to thicken your skin, that is not feedback. That is somebody using some stupid line to justify being mean to you.
If what they're saying almost like activates you, where it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. I never thought about it that way before. But now that we've talked about it, I could actually do these things, and that might clarify the work I'm trying to do that is already going that direction. But then there's also just, you shouldn't do a podcast. You shouldn't be an actor. You shouldn't be a television creator or host or writer or whatever. And that's not activating. That's shutting down.
Well, and there's no middle road. Like there's no apathy in that dialogue. You're either going to feel yucky or you're going to feel inspired. Or what? Maybe inspired is the wrong word. Like because I work in video,
in a good way. Could be
like because I work in video. I've never done a video ever since I started this business where the client says, "Oh, it's perfect." They always give you feedback, and I would say not. And like sometimes the list is long. It's 3 pages of email notes, right? And I would say 98% of the time I am like, oh, that's awesome. Now I know what you want. I mean, the frustration is that you always want to be a place when you're doing my kind of job, not yours, but mine, is you want to know the more you can prevent that from happening by understanding what your client wants up front, the
Yeah.
less notes you'll get, because it
Yeah.
just saves a lot of money, time, and energy. However, a lot of clients won't know whether you're, a visual artist or a performer. If you have a client that's not familiar with the artwork that you're producing for them, they, like, if somebody said to you, Janessa, can you please write me a skit? I'm going to use it for my this big conference. They're not actors, they're not writers, but they want to do a skit at a conference to motivate their team. And you're like, no problem, I can do that. If they've never done a skit, they've never written a skit, they don't understand creative writing, they probably will have a really hard time giving you direction. So if they give you tons of feedback after, it's not because they don't like it, it's because they didn't know what they wanted, because this is new territory for them.
Yeah.
So my
key.
job is to do more work. Like, I've gotten better and better and better and better at doing the work up front, so that I know what the client wants, so that there's less work on the back end, so everyone's happier. However, I don't feel yucky about it. Like, I never feel like, oh, they hated the video. But once in a blue moon, you get somebody who is a jerk, and usually they don't want to pay. They're, they're not easy to work with. They're usually the ones that do everything, that they're difficult clients. So what I'm saying is, trust your instincts on that, and you'll know, because I get feedback every single day, but the second I don't get good feedback, I seriously, I bawl my eyes out. I'm 52 years old and I still will cry like a baby if somebody's a jerk to me. I mean, I get over it pretty quick because I have a glass of wine.
Yeah. Cheers. But I think, I love what you're saying, because to me, it's very much about clarity. Like, maybe they didn't describe their vision fully to you the first time, which hopefully they would, but maybe they didn't know. But now they're catching it. Oh, okay, so let's clear up this vision, because now I have this idea of what I actually want. And you're like, okay, now we know what you actually want.
But they're not slamming you. They're not saying this is horrible. They're just saying,
clarifying the work.
I'm so sorry, Janessa. What I really meant was, I want a clown in the skit. So you're able to you might be a little like, oh, why didn't you tell me you wanted a clown? I would have said no to the skit. No, I was kidding.
Yeah.
But it is sometimes when you're an artist who's doing work for non-artists, just be prepared for a bit of a dance, because they just don't know our world. And that's okay. But when somebody is when you're having a client or a director or another actor, whoever it is, criticize you and hurt your feelings, don't take it, or take it, have a cry, but don't, like, it. That's their intention, isn't to help you. Their intention is to knock you down. Right. So, and that is why it's so important to have the right people in your life constantly, so that when that happens, you can share. And if you ever go to another artist and say, this director said this to me, and you're crying, and they're like, well, Janessa, you should just listen to that director, find another friend, because nobody, unless you're really, I have met a few actors, not a lot, only a few, who shouldn't be actors. And I don't know why, because I think it's such a hard career. I don't know why you'd want to do it if you're not good at it. But it's very rare. Most people who pursue the performing arts or any kind of art, they are doing it because there's nothing else they can do. Because it is such a hard way to make a living. It'd be way easier to do something else. So, exactly. And yet that's why we drink wine. But because, and so most artists are there because it is their purpose. It is what God's given them the gift to do. And if that once in a blue moon, very, very rare, somebody's in the wrong calling, well, okay, maybe they do need to hear from somebody who really loves them. Maybe you shouldn't do this for a living. But 99.99% of people are doing it because it's what they absolutely, in the core of their person, believe this is what they were called to do, which also evolves. You might be an actor now, and in 10 years you might be more of a writer director. But anyways,
but it's still feeding that same inspiration in yourself, I think, that is coming through.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't seem to matter when I've talked to people on the show, and then before and after, like, you're always a little nervous. Like, I know we were talking before, like, James Taylor, he was recently on The Voice, and he talked about, like, this man has done so many shows, and he talked about how he gets nervous before going on stage still.
Yeah.
And this is like James Taylor. So it is very leveling. But on the other hand, with time, you do gain wisdom and discernment of, like, that director doesn't have my best interest in mind, or the show's best interest in mind. versus okay, this is actually some critique that I can work with and move
Totally.
through
Totally.
and actually discern.
And some of it is a personality thing. Some people
Right.
jive with different personalities. And that's the other thing, is if you're an actor or a performer and you're just starting out, or even if you're not starting out, but you need work, that sometimes we say yes to things because we just need work. Just be careful, because it's really hard on your self-esteem to do a gig with a director who is difficult or hard to work with, or is hard, hard on you. And so, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Or a client who's really hard. Like if you say somebody decided to sponsor your podcast, you're like, oh, someone's sponsoring my podcast. I can make $1,000 a week off this sponsor.
Yeah.
But they're very difficult, and they don't believe in what you're doing, and they don't have your best interest. Then that $1,000 will end up feeling like the biggest weight around you. So that's something you have to be careful with. But on the same token, every time you have a difficult experience as a performer, actor, artist, you do learn way more than when everything goes well.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly, like, especially, I have to tell you, anyone who's listening to this, who's an entrepreneur and an artist,
Yep.
like, be
Here we
prepared to make a mistake a day. And at the end of your first year owning your own business, you will literally have an MBA that you earned by making mistakes. And so that is when I mean, it's just the truth. It's, everyone says you learn more from making mistakes, but honestly, it is not easy, because you really start feeling like an idiot. When I 6 months into running this little media firm I have now, I was making so many mistakes that I got to a point where I just said, I don't think I'm cut out for this.
Right.
What I realized 6 months later, because I started May 1st, 2019, what I realized is that I had to make those mistakes to be where I am now. Yeah. And now, even though it's crazy time economically in the world, I am like, I have got more work than I have hours in the day. Like, it's crazy. I am so busy.
That's
really
good.
interesting work. But 6 months ago, when I was making all those mistakes, I needed to do that to be here today.
Yeah.
It was not easy. It really wasn't. And that's where I go back to have some people around you who can really support you. Have a mentor who's older than you, and wiser than you, and who's done 20 years ahead of you. Have a group of like-minded people. And I just can't encourage that enough, because people get very discouraged. And you know what happens? They quit.
Yeah.
And
just like that. Hey.
Yeah. And then I don't know what it is. Angela Conrad said this in her speech when she did her dissertation. She said she has seen artists who have quit, and 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, it still haunts them. And there is something about the calling of an artist. I mean, I just watched a documentary about the musicians of the Holocaust. And these people, a lot of them were able to live because they played music. And I don't want to get into the details of the documentary, but what was amazing is this one woman was 109. She's playing her piano, 109.
Oh my gosh.
What was amazing is that here they are in a concentration camp, and everything's been taken from them, everything, but they still had their art. And that art is what got them through. And, now she's 109, and it still is what gets her through every day. That's why she's 109 and still playing the piano. So really, really, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling discouraged, get a mentor, get a group of people, start a community, start an online community, or join one that's already going. Try a couple different ones out, and make sure you are supported and you're celebrated and you're loved, and because it is not easy, and it won't get any easier. You'll have highs and you'll have lows, and it'll just keep going. And sometimes you'll just have artists, like I'm sure you and Charlotte do this. You pick up the phone and you're just like, ah!
Yeah, for sure.
but there's something about being part of, a writing group or whatever it is, and just to be able to support each other and lift each other up, because it's hard, really, really hard. It's also so amazing, hard. But it's hard. And I think sometimes we think when it's hard, we were talking about this earlier, when you really get at what you do, it isn't hard, but the work is hard. Like, Like acting, when you, like if I just gave you a script right now that you loved and I threw money at you and I said, go do this show, and you didn't have to worry about money, you didn't have to worry about marketing, you could just act, you'd be in heaven. But most of us have to do both. Most of us have to do the acting or the writing or the performing or whatever, and we have to do the hustle. And I don't think I've met anyone who doesn't have to do the hustle. Like we probably think, oh, Meryl Streep doesn't have to hustle anymore. Mm-hmm. But you know what? She does. Like everyone has to hustle to some degree.
Yeah.
Meryl doesn't have to hustle quite.
But she certainly had to hustle at the beginning. She talks about that actually, how people at the start of her career said that she was just too plain looking and that she'd never get to do like she wouldn't be good for roles. Like I can't envision telling Meryl Streep. But you know, it's so interesting, the gift of perspective though, because like you were saying 6 months ago, you know, making all these mistakes to where you are now. Just quickly, are you able to share what any of those mistakes were? Like if
mistakes.
If you, I mean, only as comfortable as you feel like you can share.
I would say it was when I would take on a client that I intuitively knew was not going to be a good fit for me. You know, and then once you take them on and they've given you money and you're in the middle of it, then it's like a whole bunch of mistakes, man. It's just like boom, 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 boom.
Right.
Number two, you know, understanding the difference between taking on the wrong client and being good at what you do. So when you take on the wrong client and you're in the middle of it and it's a big job and they're very difficult and things go wrong and you have a stomach ache all the time, then you're like, why am I doing this? This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing for a living. And that's not true. That's not true. You're supposed to be doing this for a living, just not with them.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not, no disrespect against the client at all. I don't mean it as I have, most of my clients are amazing, but it's, and the other mistake I made is when my intuition, my gut told me not to work with somebody. I had a huge contract with somebody and I knew that I mean, I'll just be really honest. I'll be really vulnerable here on your podcast. She didn't like me and I knew it.
Right.
And, I went ahead and took the contract thinking, we're all grown-ups, so she doesn't like me. She'll love me. Yeah. Who doesn't love me? She'll be so in love with me at the end of this contract that we'll be best friends and she'll invite me to her birthday party. But no, she did not like me and it didn't get better. So, and you know, for whatever reason, and there's a story behind that nobody cares about, but I shouldn't have taken it. Don't work with people who believe in you, work with people who you like working with. If you don't like working with them, don't say, well, you know, I need to just grow up a bit and just learn to work with people who I don't like. Don't. No. I mean, yes, once in a while you might be cast in a play or a movie and maybe one of your leads you don't like. I mean, don't get me wrong. You have to get along with everybody in the sandbox, but you know what I mean. So those were the biggest mistakes. And then I would say the last one is what we started this whole show with, money. Not charging what the project was worth, not looking at all the things that could go wrong. So when you, for example, if you were going to do, I'm trying to think, you know, with your podcast, if you had somebody come along saying, I want to sponsor your podcast and I'm going to give you $100 a week. And you're like, well, I'll take it, you know? But if you looked at what they were expecting out of you and you're like, they want you to mention them every 15 minutes in the podcast and you have to say this, you have to stop in the middle of the podcast. And you looked at this plethora of things and you're like, that's worth more than $100, right? Or whatever it is. I'm just trying to use that as an analogy. Yeah. But on the flip side, you can't ask for too much. You know, there's a lot of talk out there with artists and small business owners that, you know, you're worth it. But the truth is people only have so much money. Right? Yeah. And so you have to know who your client is. So pricing is really, really hard. And for what it's worth, all you creatives listening to this, it never gets easier. It really just doesn't. It's always hard. And it's always this game where you're like, okay, well, how much time is it going to take me? What kind of job is this? What's it worth? And what's their budget? So for example, if the municipality of Abbotsford came to you and they wanted to sponsor your podcast, they have a very clean set budget. They know they have $5,000 to sponsor a podcast once a year. But if your best friend came to you, like if Karen Alexander Media came to you and I said, Janessa, I know you're worth $1 million, but I really want to sponsor your podcast, but I only right now have $250. What can we work out? So yeah, it's a fine line. And especially when you're brand new, You can't overcharge, because what happened, you need to build up. In my business, I needed to build up a library of videos that my firm did. I mean, I've been doing video my whole life, but I need to build up a library specific to Karen Elgersma Media. And I needed to be able to make myself affordable enough to be able to do that. So once you get that, then you raise your prices a little bit, and then you raise and then you find that sweet spot, right? So the money, but yeah, that's a tough one. And again, I come back to always, if you said to a client, this video is going to be $1,000, and then you realize this should have been a $3,000 video, like what they want, the scope of it. You know what? So what? Just do it. You know, that's when you go to your bestie, your business bestie or your creative bestie, and you say, I did it again. And your best friend, don't worry about it. It was an amazing video. It's going to open doors for you. And it's true. It will open doors for you. So always do good work. Don't get pouty about it. You made a mistake, learn from it. And then the next time you'll do better.
I'm just writing that down for myself. That's so good. But I just love that, because it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about is two kind of or three main topics, but it's like quality, and then it's like trusting your instinct, and like the confidence, and all of that kind of ties together to me, because I think that that's really, really important, like to have the confidence to charge and have your value and have your worth, but also having intuition about when that's going to be not a good match for you and not a good deal, just to have the financial, but then to realize that the cost is actually too great, because it's costing you your peace and costing you your time and your efforts, but then also just wanting to do your best despite all that. So I think
and then learning to let go. So I had a client that I let go, and I think they were thrilled that I did, because we just didn't vibe, you know? And I said to them, when I let them go, I said, like, you're a great person. I'm a great person. We just don't vibe. But the other thing I was going to say, is that when you're not a young artist, I mean, you could be any age, but when you're an artist, or maybe this is your like second act, right? You worked at a bank your whole life and you quit, and now you're pursuing your art.
Yeah, good.
If you're an artist, and you're kind of new in the game, that be patient. Like, I know that sounds like a cliche, Janessa, because I'm sure your patience
no, it's
out
very
as a young
important.
artist, but it really does take time. It really, really does. I you know, when you get older, like when I got into television, I was making nothing. Like I was literally, I think I was making $50 a story or $75 a story or something. But you know what? I learned so much, and that learning and those connections and I would show up to work like I was making $1 million. Like I never treated the work anything less, because I was so low on the pay scale. And what happened is, when I looked back at my career and I remembered how low, like I was making really good money when I quit television. And it's like I forgot that I spent all those years not making any money, right? And by the time I left TV, not only was I making a very healthy salary, but I, you know, had free clothes and free hair and free makeup. I mean, not free. I mean, it's a contra that you do as part of working in that industry. I don't mean like free, but I just meant like it was lots of perks. Yeah. But it took a long time. So when you look back at it, it doesn't seem so long, but when you're in the middle of it, oh my goodness, some days you're just like,
in the middle of it,
make money
in the middle of it. And it makes sense. I mean, and I'm so encouraged by what you said about even 6 months ago and where you're at now. I just think that's so encouraging, because to hear from somebody who has had some career changes and wisdom with that, but it still happens. It's just the reality of the game we're playing. And just being able to be like, okay, this is normal.
Well, and if you're doing an act 2, which you could do at 25, 35, or 55, I call act 2s is when you switch gears to another career. That's the hardest part about getting used to not making money. Like if you're graduate from university, none of you are making money. Even people who become, you know, professional lawyers or doctors. I mean, when Dell became a lawyer, we were like poor as church mice, because lawyers make $25,000 a year and they got student loans to pay back. No matter what you're doing, when you start your career, you're probably around a lot of people who aren't making money right now. But when you're my age and you're not bringing home an income and you pay all this money to your staff and rent, and it's hard on the ego, right? Not that one, I know,
Yeah, but people judge
but it
that.
is. And you
Yeah.
judge yourself. You're like,
Yeah.
this is
Wow.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I remember coming home and saying to Dell, this is ridiculous. Because
Mhm.
all the money that I would bring into my firm, I spent on, on my art wall behind me, on my
Yes.
editing equipment, on my voiceover booth, on my staff, on building my website. Like it cost me $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month some months to build this business up, to get it to where it needs to be so I could do it.
Mhm.
But and I got super caught up in that, like, my caught up was, and then I remember interviewing a business owner who had hired me to do some work for her. She was very successful financially, very, very successful. And I
Mhm.
just said, I think I need some advice because I just can't make any money. She goes, well, how long have you been doing it? I'm like, well, 6 months. And she's like, she just started laughing. She threw her head back and she started laughing. She goes, 6 months? Yeah. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, no.
Give
But
yourself a hot second to keep
yeah,
going.
yeah. She's like,
Ugh.
you'll be lucky if you're able to even bring home a little bit of money in a year. And
Mhm.
honestly, before you're consistently profitable, be 5 years. And I almost fainted because I thought 5 years feels like an eternity. But
Mhm.
what she was trying to remind me of is that it takes time. So whether you're,
Yes.
if tomorrow you decided to start your own theater company, it might take you 5 years before that theater company is profitable, even if you've been at the theater thing for
Mhm.
most of your life. So be patient. And it means, my friends, I tell you, and lean in and listen to this one, take work. You
Mhm.
might have to do work that you don't love, that you like a lot.
Mhm.
For me,
Mhm.
it was earned media.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
took on tons of earned media contracts
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
bring in money to my firm, because it was just me doing it. I didn't have to subcontract that out, so that I could keep going, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have to anymore. I'm at a place where I have so many videos and so many awesome projects that I don't need to. But and it wasn't horrible work. It was like my second favorite thing, or like my
Sure.
fifth favorite.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
Totally.
if you're really good at something else and it
Mhm.
pays the bills, do not, have some humble pie for dinner and
Mhm.
do it, because it really helps you build your business up in a way that I remember a professor told me when I was in creative writing that you can either drive cab while you're writing your novel, or you could write scripts for the beachcombers. Because back then that was a
Yeah.
big thing, is writing scripts for the beachcombers. So if for you, for example, Janessa might be a good example, is that, let's say you decided to teach acting classes to kids, right?
Mhm.
In your community center, and it paid you $2,000 a month. You're better off doing that than, and God bless all the waitresses. I'm not saying being a waitress is
Of
a bad thing, but
course.
you're better off doing that because you're in your genre. Like, I
Yeah,
know
you're
you don't,
building into your skill.
yeah, you don't want to teach kids for a living, but you're better off in that world, staying in your genre, making some side hustle money here to pay for the big hustle over here in
Mhm.
your genre, right?
Mhm.
So look around at ways that you can make money doing things you really love and you're really good at in your genre, knowing that this is the diamond, this is the prize right here,
Mhm.
but making money doing it around here will get you there.
Yeah, like if you know what your North Star is, you can kind of go, okay, these
Yeah,
things kind of line up at least in the direction,
yeah,
as
yeah.
opposed to certain things. And some, for some people it might work for them to waitress or whatever, but
Sure,
for
yeah,
for a
like
lot of us, I think
yeah,
it's like we would rather be getting those learning
yeah.
experiences and like doing something at least in the field of
Well, and what I've
the
just noticed,
ballpark.
what I've observed, is people who do that get there faster, because
Okay.
they're much more, I just find it's discouraging. Like, and
Hmm.
again, I know that being a waitress can be a great way to be available for auditions. I still get that. But after a while, if you've just been waitressing for 10 months and you have a university education and you're paying your student loans every month, you kind of go, I'm waitressing. I could have done this without a student loan, right? And
Hmm.
so, whereas if you're teaching acting and somebody's paying you, the school district or the community center is paying you good money, and the kids love you, and the parents are like, man, you're good at this, you feel like that is being fed, even if it's being fed over here. It's snack
Yeah.
food, not dinner, but you're being fed.
It's
So,
snack food, not dinner.
yeah,
Living for that. That's so
yeah.
good.
And,
That's
and
so
it,
good.
it builds your confidence because you're good at it, right? So
Yes.
you go in and you're good at it, and you're reminded every time you teach. I'm using this analogy, it could be something else, but
Hmm.
every time you teach that class, you're reminded, dang, I'm good at this, right? and it keeps you motivated and it keeps you in the game, because if you, like I said, if the only way you can make money is by working at a job that has nothing to do with what you love, you just get really discouraged after a while. And that's when people just say, forget it. I've seen, and maybe they're not meant to be actors or writers or artists or whatever, but I've seen so many actors do that and then give up and then go back to school to become like a massage therapist or something. And again, that might be their calling. Like, they may realize, I wasn't called to be an actor. I took a detour. It was awesome. It was fun. But actually, I feel like my purpose is to heal people through massage. So I don't say that to put any massage therapist down or any actors who've changed careers.
Our MTs, we still love you.
Yeah, totally. Oh, right now, I need one so bad. I'm so glad they've reopened. But I feel like it's just really, really important to stay somehow within your genre, so that you have that ability to stay motivated and confident, and your cup is being filled a little bit, so that you can continue to pursue it. And you know what? You might find you can do both. Like, you decide, maybe that's what motivates you to start a theater company, and your theater company does podcasts, it does video production, it does live theater, and it teaches kids. So it always leads to something else, and it helps you find out what you're really good at and what you want to do. But be patient, do that, and it will come. And it came faster for me owning my own business, even though I made 1 million mistakes, because I've been at it for so long. So my 1 year, but if you were 21 doing this, it might be 5 years. It might not be. It might not be. But I'm just saying, be patient, be kind to yourself, have support.
Somebody said to me recently, like, with oil painting, you have to keep the paint wet. If it
Yeah.
dries out, it's gone.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel about what we're saying here. It's like, you have to keep the paint wet. You have to, it's not the finished product, but you have to keep working at it, or your passion for it and that feedback loop, it just gets really dried up, I think.
Yeah. And I always say that, actors and singers, like, if you're a singer, for example, sing at weddings, sing at bar mitzvahs, sing at, and I know it's not your dream job, but Michael Bublé got discovered by David Foster, his cousin's wedding in Burnaby. He went to see his cousin get married. Bublé was the hired band. He looked at that guy and he said, holy cow, does anyone else see the talent that I see? And I met Michael Bublé right after that. Actually, he was hilarious. He was a pretty rough guy. Not rough, like good rough, but like anyways.
Yes.
Say though is he got discovered because he was doing what he loves, even if he was doing it at a small level. So whatever it is that you love doing, fine. If you're an artist, do pop-up art classes for women, and include wine, because women love to drink wine and do pop-up classes. If you're if you love storytelling and write, like, whatever you love doing, find a way to do it as a side hustle while you're trying to get your main hustle.
Karen, you're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for all your wisdom. And also thank you for being vulnerable too, because I know that really helps me, and that I think is just going to be so edifying for everyone who's listening too, to be like, oh, okay, so it's totally normal that I'm such a screw up right now, and it's going to get better.
Yeah. It's going to get better, and you still might have those moments.
Yeah.
It will get better. It will get better.
That's where the wine comes into play, or the water.
Yeah.
Turn that water into wine. Okay, thanks, Karen. You're amazing.
You're
Love
amazing.
you so much. Thank you so much.